everyone, I'm Lexi.
And I'm Chris.
And we just ran the Long Hunter 50K. So, what is the Long Hunter 50K?
Long Hunter 50K is a 50-kilometer, 31-mile trail run.
We ran a road marathon before, and that's about 26.2 miles. The difference here is an extra 5 miles to make this an ultra marathon, and it's mostly single-track dirt trails.
And it's in Long Hunter State Park.
Long Hunter State Park is just outside of Nashville, Tennessee, on the shores of the Percy Priest Lake.
And the name Long Hunter comes from these 18th century hunters who would come out from Virginia and Kentucky for 6 months at a time.
You know, overall, it's a very long time on your feet.
It'd be nice to have Hokas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Long Hunter route is on a forested rolling terrain resulting in 1,100 feet of elevation gain. 6 miles of pavement, 25 miles of shaded, relatively flat single track, skirting around the Percy Priest Lake. Altogether, that's made up of 3 looping trails connected by Park Roads and Bryant Grove Trail. In summary, it's Couchville Lake Loop, then Bryant Grove Trail, Jones Mill Multi-Use Trail, then Bryant Grove Trail, Upper Bluff and Shoreline Area, then Bryant Grove Trail down and back, and then less than a mile of Park Roads to the finish.
And you have to do it all in 8 hours.
In the world of ultras, Long Hunter 50K is a relatively easy race. It's flat and fast. We run regularly, but in the months building up to the race, we increased our miles. We tested out shoes, clothes, nutrition, and hydration gear.
I had a little bit of an ankle injury, so I couldn't do a lot of running.
But when race day came, we were anxious to give it our all.
Yep, and get it over with.
Yeah. Race day morning dawned cool and clear. We had a series of hot days before, and the cool weather was a welcome relief. I was on autopilot that morning. You eat breakfast, you get dressed, drive over, pick up the badges, drop off the drop bags. Coming in with the drop bags. It's Chris's. It's mine. We even got to cheer on the half and full marathoners because they started 15 minutes before us.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
And then it was our turn, and we made things a little extra difficult by filming it all.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
I had a GoPro mounted to my chest, and I hadn't actually noticed where my hands were when I was filming it. So it kind of looks like a first-person video game shooter.
For my part, I had a 3rd-gen GoPro, which meant it was extra shaky, and it was on a little selfie stick, which made for some decent shots, but unfortunately I didn't have a good place to stow it when I wasn't using it, so it meant that I was carrying it the entire time we were running. I was worried about going out too hot. People who don't moderate their effort are known to blow up in the middle of the race and succumb to exhaustion, cramps, and injury.
So our strategy was to try to run fast when we had pavement or a flat trail, and then just kind of bank that time for the trickier parts of the trail.
And this first bit of the trail is smooth, the weather is cool, and a great opportunity for us to go fast. So we're really trying to balance that need for speed and endurance, but the cold, the excitement, the energy of the other runners really got the better of us. And we wound up making really good time, and by the time we reached Couchville Lake Loop, we were really booking it.
Yep.
What did it say?
8 minutes, 17 seconds.
Okay. Is that mile 2 or mile 1?
Mile 1.
Okay.
As the name suggests, this is a trail around Couchville Lake. It's a wide, paved walking trail and open to the public, which means we do interact with people who are just there for fun. It's flat, shaded, and even has a long wooden bridge that I really think is the highlight of this stretch.
Yep. And you can start to see the distance between the runners at this point. It's because some people are just like going out as fast as they can, kind of like we were. Other people were starting to moderate their pace. So we were basically trying to keep up with the lead runners at that point.
So I was kind of hoping to follow these two people, because that's what one did it before.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
I don't
But she's
think
also one they said that took a wrong turn at the end, but she finished under 5 hours.
Granted, by the time we finished this loop, there really wasn't anyone to see except us because we were running together. We ran our marathon together and we really wanted to finish this race together too.
But unlike the marathon, which was on a road, this was a little bit trickier because of all the single track trails. So we had to kind of take turns. Someone was in front, someone was in back, and I think we both liked being in front because you could see a lot more.
Do you want to go first or me?
Either way.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also hard to follow when the person in the front is setting the pace and you're so fast. But the goal was to finish in 5 hours, and that required a steady clip.
Off that sidewalk, left on the trail.
Thank you. Once we finish Couchville Lake Loop, we come onto Bryant Grove Trail. That's 4 miles of forested dirt trail following the shoreline of Percy Priest Lake. It's our first taste of dirt trail on the race and relatively flat. It starts out smooth but gives way to lots of rocks and roots.
Are you drinking enough?
Ah,
We haven't really focused on that.
And we started catching the half marathon runners and the full marathon runners.
Distance 5 miles. Time 42 minutes 51 seconds. Previous miling 9 minutes 1 second.
You also start encountering some of the runners who are turning back. I think these are the leading half marathon runners.
yeah, because at the end of Bryant Grove, that is pretty much the halfway point for them, so they're turning back already halfway through.
Yeah.
In fact, so by the time that we finish Bryant Grove, we are 6.7 miles into the race.
And this was our first aid station stop, and we knew we wanted to get in and out of there really fast. So I just filled up my water bottles, and we took off.
And we know that this is really important because the next section will be really hard. We have 1 mile of gentle uphill on a paved road. Then we get to Jones Mill Multi-Use Trail, which we also know as the mountain bike trail. Because while it is open to hikers and runners like us, it is first and foremost a mountain bike trail, which means the big rocks, knobby roots, tight switchbacks are all a feature of this trail rather than a bug. It's far less groomed than Bryant Grove and an extra challenge.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of fallen trees. It's way steeper than any other part of the trail. A couple times we nearly fell. You basically got to just keep your eyes focused on the ground the whole time. So it's kind of mentally taxing.
It also takes a lot of focus.
Oh, I almost fell.
Oh,
But then again, you can't really just keep your eyes on the ground because there's also the mountain bikers that we were talking about. You see, the trail generally goes clockwise, but for the race, we're running counterclockwise so that we can see the mountain bikers coming at us. Fortunately, they're all pretty chill and they see us generally before we see them. And they'll pull off to the side and be pretty pleasant as we pass by.
so hello.
Hello.
Yeah, and we set our expectations for pace really low for that section. So this was where we were. The reason we were running so fast at the
Over at
beginning of the race,
Couchville.
yeah, was to try to compensate for what we knew would take us a lot longer up and down these hills and these tricky bits.
This was our big challenge that we knew ahead of time was going to be where we would probably sink most of our time.
The 9 was because of all the people on the trail, I think. Hello.
In the build-up to the race, we heard a lot about people getting lost on the course. Jones Mill is the easiest place for that to happen.
Yeah, given that there's so many different ways the trail splits, there's so many different ways of getting lost. There's actually one aid station deep in that area. So there's one guy that can maybe help you get out of there if you're totally lost. and the marathon runners take a different route. So it's you don't want to follow, don't just blindly follow somebody.
I mean, the trail is well marked, but you're going in different directions, and if you miss something, you're so focused on the trail that you can sometimes miss those markings. I didn't realize that the marathoners also do the mountain bike trail.
Yeah, I think I've heard that.
But they don't do the whole route, so we want to be sure.
They don't do the whole thing?
They don't do the whole thing. They just do a portion of it.
Oh, man.
So we want to be sure not to take their direction. I mean, suffice it to say, by the time we finish Jones Mill, it is a relief. Not only because we don't have to worry about tripping over those rocks and roots, but we're also halfway done with the race at this point.
Oh, nice. Yeah, in terms of slipping.
Yeah. My glutes are really killing me.
Not feeling too good. I'll just, finish the race, run the race I can.
Yeah. I'm glad to get out of that last section without a twisted ankle.
Yeah, we all run a good race.
Thanks, this is our first one.
Really?
Yeah, so we may be going out too hot.
Yeah. No, man, you're over halfway there. You should start booking it.
All right, have a great race.
Yeah, you too.
Okay, so how's this aid station going? I gotta grab a bunch of gels and fill up both bottles into your bottle.
By the time we reach the Bryant Grove aid station for the second time, we are pretty exhausted.
130, 118.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a welcome opportunity to refresh, but it presents the classic challenge of any ultra runner. A person can run 10K without any additional nutrition, but running in an ultra, you need to keep consuming calories to fuel your muscles. You'll have snacks, candies, gels, drinks.
All sorts of delicious stuff.
So the challenge is balancing that need to fuel without taking too much time.
But in our case, it was kind of a comedy of errors.
Yeah. All right, that's
Electrolytes here.
no.
I think that's pretty much what we should stick with there.
Yeah, no, I agree. Do you want a peanut butter and jelly or something? I mean, a banana.
Oh.
And then some other people came in, we started chatting with them.
I took a wrong turn, so I just need to know how much I'm.
That was tricky back there. All the leaves hiding the rocks.
Yeah.
Alright, let me see here. 12. 50K or marathon?
50.
16.2?
What?
Am I looking at this right?
This is a seed marathon.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, 16.2.
Oh, I'm
If
over
it'll come out.
a mile and a half. Oh, come on.
And then at some point I thought, oh, I could use another Advil. At least I said Advil and I meant acetaminophen. And so one guy went to the car to get one. So we're still waiting and waiting. And then he brings it back and it's in this weird vial. For some reason, the pills don't come out. So he's like tapping it, nothing's coming out. Finally, he grabs a banana and sticks the tip of the banana in there and pulls one out. And I think, okay, great. Maybe the next one will come out easy. And so I asked for another one, and sure enough, the second one doesn't come out. And so finally, we get all of our food, all of our candy, our painkillers, and we're ready to go. But it's been like 5 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was a lot of time that got spent there. But hey, at least bananas can be useful in more ways than one.
What else would you do with banana?
You eat it!
Okay.
With the aid station at our backs, we're heading back down Bryant Grove Trail. Now it's later in the day and it's getting hot. And by hot, I mean 60s. So yes, if you're sitting like this, it's not a big deal. But when you're running, the ground is baking as far as I'm concerned. What was refreshing in a level trail now feels kind of tedious. And what's worse, we know we're going to have to run this all over again.
I think a total of 4 times.
Yeah.
So when we get to the end of this, we just turn around and go back?
Yeah, there's a loop. Remember that there's a trail that was being...
Oh, that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
But it's also kind of the main thoroughfare for all the other runners.
Hey.
It's because the half marathon's on it, the marathon's on it, the 50K's on it. So you got people coming back and forth in different directions. So you don't really have a sense of where you rank in this race because those people could be way ahead of you or way behind.
Distance 17 miles.
17.
It's a bit of a head fake. Now, granted, we know that probably most of the half marathoners are done by now, but the people coming towards us very well could be 50K people and represent the winning lineup. And we're confused and starting to suffer from a bit of exhaustion.
Problem might be because I haven't eaten that much. I'm gonna try to do this gel now. Ah. Yeah, I'm eating the red one.
Well, it means a double extra. As we leave Bryant Grove, we are now coming to the Upper Bluff and Shoreline area. It's mostly paved park roads, hot and exposed, but a welcome break from the roots and rocks of Bryant Grove. There's also a short stretch of gravel along the lake shore, and that is some of the most scenic stretch of the entire race.
Yeah, and there's one set of stairs, it's a pretty big hill, and there's also another confusing turnoff because the marathon or half marathon, I think it's the half marathoners, go in a different direction on that section. So
I think we even met one guy who did have the misfortune of turning down on that trail, which meant that he had to add an extra at least a mile to his route.
Yeah.
It's not like you get points for that.
No.
Now we're coming back down Bryant Grove Trail, and it is approaching midday. The sun is high in the sky, and it is pure tedium.
You know, for some people, that's just running. I think that if you can figure out this Bryant Grove section of the trail and be really fast at Bryant Grove, you can win this race because you have to do it 4 times.
Yeah, and you know, when you look at it, it's 4 times, it's 4 miles, that's 16 miles, that's half the race.
Yeah.
We run the length of Bryant Grove to the aid station, and this time it's not that long of a wait because I have a pretty upset stomach and we're ready to finish this race. So all we do is fill up our flasks, but the fatigue is really starting to hit in a different way as we turn around and head back.
For the last time.
Yay!
So at this point, it's about a quarter of a mile in. I hear this like stumble and then a thud and then a painful scream. And I turn around and you're on the ground and you're like holding your arm in a very awkward position. And my first thought is you must have broken your arm or collarbone or something like that. So don't get up.
And unfortunately, I can't tell him what hurts because in the course of falling, I managed to get my elbow in my gut and effectively winded myself. So I'm writhing around on the ground, trying to catch my breath. Finally, I'm able to breathe again, and Chris is able to help me get up and do a systems check. I mean, the only thing that was really broken was my sunglasses, but I landed in some pretty soft dirt, so there's dirt everywhere, and I know that there's going to be some bruises eventually, but it seems like I'm able to move. I realized at this point we were not going to make our 5-hour goal. And so I was about ready to just limp it in. But you gave me a pep talk.
Yeah, well, he said, let's just start walking. Before we knew it, you were running again.
We are invigorated as we leave Bryant Grove and run to Couchville Aid Station.
31 miles. Time, 5 hours, 13 minutes, 18 seconds. Previous mile in, 9 minutes, 31 seconds.
All right, we're gonna sprint it in.
Yeah,
Got the numbers?
Finish it up.
Cool.
Running shoulder to shoulder down the pavement.
I love you, Lizzie.
I love you, Anthony.
I guess they'd say this, the horses smell in the barn.
Yep.
We got it.
Ready to see the end of that finish line.
No one's behind us.
We turned down the final gravel road to the finish line.
Don't forget to hold hands. Oh, first turn us on.
So we don't have video of the finish, but fortunately, we were able to go back and perform a very accurate reenactment. We crossed the finish line, hand in hand, exhausted and coherent, but together.
I think you were technically 3 seconds ahead of me.
Well, it wouldn't have really mattered, except...
Overall?
For the 50K.
No way. Well, what about my wife?
She's first female.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah. The 50K. Or no, sorry. No, yeah, I'm right. First 50K.
She got first in 50K?
Yeah.
And then I'm second in 50K.
You're third.
When you got off that hill, I don't know.
This is a half. Why does it say half?
I thought, well, who came in between us? We were hand in hand. How did this happen?
But she's first?
She's first female. Yeah.
Oh, first female. Okay.
Not first overall.
I was going to say.
It's like, dang, how's that math work? Yeah, sorry.
I would have held her back, you know.
Yeah. That's right there back there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
She's first overall female.
So I was focused on getting some water and a banana to eat and getting cleaned off. And there was a lovely woman there who also had a stethoscope and checked my breathing.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Because I had no idea what was going on with you.
Okay, and this was for the female, this is for female, yep.
So that's...
I was so obsessed with coming in under 5 hours, it seemed impossible to be competitive once we'd missed our goal. We were so exhausted, it was hard to process what we had done. I did not expect that.
You're number one. You're going to give Courtney a run for her money.
Third overall.
First female. So would you do this one again?
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't make the 5 hours. Oh, we just need to train to be more efficient at the aid stations and don't fall.
Now don't fall.
Yeah, we'll try not to. Thank you to the organizers and volunteers and park staff. I guess it's time for us to pick out a race for the spring.
Yeah, sounds good.
Nice. So if this was at all helpful or at the very least entertaining, please give us a like and follow along for more race reports because, yeah, it looks like we'll have more in the future.
Nice.
Feel just minor abrasions on the knee, the hip, the elbow, and the eye, and actually, I got a black eye.
Yeah, it looked worse like a week later.
Have you opened yours?
Yep.
Cheers.
Cheers.